60 Hells Angels surrounded a police station when a woman's screams echoed through the holding cells. She'd been framed by her ex-husband, a decorated detective. The rain hammered against the precinct windows as Laura Keane pressed her face against the cold steel bars. Her mascara ran in dark rivers down her cheeks, mixing with tears she couldn't control. The cuffs bit into her wrists. Behind her, male officers exchanged knowing glances and smirks. Laura Keane was 34 years old, a nurse, a single mother fighting for her son. And tonight, she was being accused of drug possession and distribution based on evidence she'd never seen. Crimes she'd never committed. Her ex-husband. Detective Harris Keane stood in the corridor just out of sight. Arms crossed, satisfaction etched across his face. He'd planted the drugs in her car during a routine traffic stop he'd orchestrated. The text messages on her phone, forged using software he'd confiscated from a previous case. His goal was simple: destroy her credibility, take full custody of their 8-year-old son, and silence her forever. Laura had tried to report his abuse months earlier. She'd gone to internal affairs with bruises on her arms and fear in her voice. The file mysteriously disappeared. The investigator reassigned. The system had protected one of its own. Now she sat in a cell, her nursing scrubs replaced with orange cotton, her future crumbling with every passing minute. But outside, in the darkness beyond the precinct walls, a single text message was being sent. They took her. Inside the dim-lit Hells Angels clubhouse 15 miles away, the air smelled of motor oil and leather. Men worked on motorcycles under fluorescent lights, the clang of tools creating a rhythmic soundtrack. Phones began lighting up simultaneously across the room. Reaper set down his wrench. His steel-gray hair was pulled back tight, his forearms covered in ink that told stories of wars fought overseas and battles won on American soil. He'd served 2 tours as a Marine before the system spit him out with nothing but nightmares and a dishonorable discharge for defending a fellow soldier from a corrupt officer. He read the message twice. Then he stood, his chair scraping against concrete. They locked up Laura, framed. Her ex did it. The room went silent. Every man there knew Laura. She'd stitched up Ghost after a bar fight. She'd sat with Axel when his daughter was sick, showing him how to check her fever. She'd never asked questions, never judged, never turned anyone away from the emergency room, no matter what colors they wore. Reaper nodded once. No debate, no discussion needed. Engines roared to life. Within 20 minutes, 60 motorcycles lined the street outside the 3rd District Police Station. Chrome gleamed under the rain-slicked streetlights. Leather cuts bearing the Death's Head patch stood out in sharp contrast against the institutional gray walls of the precinct. Locals peered from apartment windows, phones recording. News stations monitored police scanners. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. They didn't come for violence. They came for truth. They stood in formation, engines idling, a wall of loyalty that no badge could penetrate. The thunder of 60 Harley-Davidsons drowned out the rain. Police Chief Margaret Dawson stormed through the front doors, her face flushed with anger and something else, fear. Behind her, a dozen officers formed up, hands near their weapons but not drawing. They understood the optics. You need to leave. Now. This is obstruction. Reaper removed his helmet slowly, rain immediately soaking his hair. His voice was steady, almost gentle. We're not leaving until she walks out clean. The doors opened again. Detective Harris Keane stepped out in plain clothes, his badge clipped to his belt, his smirk visible even in the darkness. You think you can intimidate cops? This isn't some back alley bar. You're threatening officers of the law. The crowd on the sidewalk grew. Livestreams multiplied across social media platforms. Hashtags began trending. The world was watching. Ghost, a younger biker with scars running down his neck, stepped forward. His voice carried across the silence between thunder rolls. You hid behind your badge long enough, Harris. Time someone saw what's underneath. The bikers held the line. No weapons drawn, no threats made. Just presence. Just 60 men who refused to move until justice was served. Rain ran down leather jackets. Neon reflections from the precinct sign painted everything in alternating shades of blue and red. Inside, Laura heard the engines. She pressed her face to the small window of her cell and saw them. Her hands covered her mouth as tears came again, but this time from something other than despair. Rachel Martinez burst through the precinct's side entrance. her paralegal credentials swinging from her neck. In her hand was a flash drive that would change everything. She'd been digging through archived body cam footage for the past 6 hours, cross-referencing Harris Keane's arrest records with evidence logs. And she'd found it. Footage from 8 months earlier showing Harris planting evidence in another suspect's vehicle during a search. The suspect had pleaded guilty rather than fight a decorated detective, but the camera didn't lie. As Rachel rushed toward the chief's office, 2 officers tried to intercept her. Outside, Reaper's lieutenant had already anticipated this. The footage was broadcasting on every phone in that crowd. Within seconds, someone projected it onto the precinct's brick wall using a portable projector. The world saw what Harris had done before Chief Dawson did. The footage played in sharp clarity against the rain-wet wall. Harris planting a bag. Harris tampering with a phone. Harris falsifying his incident report. The timestamp proved everything. Harris lunged toward the officer, holding Rachel back, panic replacing his smugness. Shut it down. Shut it all down. But there was nowhere to hide. Every major news outlet was picking up the stream. Federal authorities were being tagged in posts. The FBI's public corruption hotline was being flooded with tips. Chief Dawson stood frozen for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then she turned to her sergeant. Release her. Now. The precinct doors opened. Laura Keane stepped out into the rain, still wearing orange, her hands finally free of cuffs. She was shaking, exhausted, barely able to process what was happening. Then she saw them, 60 Hell's Angels standing in perfect silence, rain streaming off their leather engines quiet now, a corridor of protection between her and the station she'd just left. Reaper walked forward and removed his jacket. He draped it around her shoulders, heavy, warm, smelling of leather and gasoline and safety. You're safe now, sister. Laura's legs buckled. She grabbed his arm to steady herself, her voice breaking. Why would you do this for me? You barely know me. Reaper's expression softened. Behind him, 60 men stood witness. Because when the law breaks its own code, we keep ours. The image spread faster than wildfire. Laura, wrapped in a biker's jacket, standing in front of 60 silent guardians while rain fell around them like a baptism. The Hells Angels formed a wall of shadow behind her, blocking out the precinct's neon lights. Phones kept filming. Within hours, the footage had been shared millions of times. AngelsForLaura trended globally. News anchors called it unprecedented. Legal scholars debated civilian intervention. But on the street, in living rooms across the country, people saw something simpler: loyalty when the system failed. Harris Keane was suspended before sunrise. By the end of the week, he faced 14 charges: falsifying evidence, perjury, witness tampering, domestic abuse, deprivation of rights under color of law. The FBI opened an investigation into the 3rd District Precinct. Internal Affairs, now under federal oversight, began reviewing every case Harris had ever touched. 17 convictions were overturned. 17 people walked free because the truth finally outweighed the badge. Laura regained full custody of her son within a month. The family court judge personally apologized for the system's failure. Her nursing license, which had been suspended pending investigation, was restored with a formal letter of commendation. News coverage continued for weeks. Anchors called the biker intervention unprecedented civilian justice. Legal experts debated whether citizens had the right to peacefully assemble to demand accountability. But for Laura, it was simpler than that. 60 strangers had stood in the rain because standing up was the right thing to do. Laura Keane now works as a legal advocate for abused women, operating out of an office funded entirely by donations from motorcycle clubs across the country. She helps women navigate the system that once tried to destroy her. She teaches them to document everything, to never stop fighting, to find their voice when the world tries to silence them. Every year on the anniversary of that rainy night, she rides with the Hells Angels in their charity convoy. Ride for the Voiceless. Hundreds of motorcycles roll through city streets, raising money for domestic violence shelters and legal aid funds. Her son rides on the back of Reaper's bike now, wearing a helmet with angel wings painted on the side. They called them outlaws, rebels, criminals. But that night, they were the law that mattered. They were the system working the way it was supposed to, protecting the innocent, demanding accountability, refusing to look away. Sometimes angels don't wear halos. They wear leather. And sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from 60 people who refuse to let the truth be buried. Subscribe if you believe strength means protecting those who can't fight back.